He sneered at her maternity dress, chuckling under his breath as though she was a joke. Little did he know within 24 hours that same woman would hold the power to change his entire world. Would you believe that a single knock on her apartment door could turn a penniless, expectant mother into a landlord overnight? Yet here we are with an old key, an unexpected inheritance and a twist of fate that would bind two sworn enemies under one roof. Prepare yourself for a tale of wounded pride, startling secrets and shattered illusions, because sometimes destiny doesn't simply knock, it barges in unannounced. On a drizzly afternoon in Midtown Manhattan, Sophia Kim bustled her way into a cozy cafe on East 43rd Street. She gently tugged at her loose-fitting maternity dress, a fluttering pastel blue garment that had seen better days. Sophia was 7 months pregnant, and though her savings were meager, she carried herself with quiet determination. Each day she told herself that life's storms only made her stronger. As she entered Brew & Bloom, she noticed the cafe was filled with the usual eclectic crowd of city workers taking their breaks. A few well-dressed men in dark suits perched around a high table, sipping espressos as they exchanged hushed business talk. A group of college students hovered near the back laptops, open scribbling notes in battered, spiral-bound notebooks. Sophia joined the long queue, her swollen ankles protesting against standing for too long. She discreetly shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to balance her exhaustion with politeness. That was when she spotted a sleek black wallet slipping from someone's table and landing with a thud near her feet. She crouched a bit awkwardly with her pregnant belly and lifted the wallet. The sleek leather carried an embossed monogram NT. She looked up, seeking its owner, and saw a tall, dashing man with perfectly styled brown hair and an impossibly expensive-looking suit. "Excuse me," Sophia called, stepping forward. "Is this yours?" He turned, eyes scanning her from head to toe, lingering on her maternity dress. A smirk twisted across his lips. He grabbed the wallet from her outstretched hand, barely mumbling a thank you. Instead, he cocked an eyebrow. "They still make dresses like that," he said, voice dripping with amusement. Sophia's cheeks flushed crimson. She blinked, trying to steady her breath. Did he really just throw an insult at her unprovoked? Her dress might have been outdated, but it was all she could afford after patching together rent and medical expenses. She expected an apology or at least a polite nod, but none came. Instead, he motioned to the barista, apparently impatient for his double macchiato, and turned his back as though Sophia were invisible. The men around him snickered, focusing on the discolored hem of her dress. Sophia's eyes stung with tears, but she refused to crumble in front of a man who looked like he stepped out of a Wall Street billboard. Nicholas Townsend. She caught the name stitched on his briefcase, strolled away with his coffee in one hand and phone in the other, leaving Sophia behind as the cafe line inched forward. She couldn't help but overhear him bragging to a friend on the phone. "Yes, Dad's finalizing the deal with Morgan and Finch tomorrow. Once that's done, it's practically ours. But I told him it's a worthless old building. If it were up to me, I'd tear it down." She frowned, her curiosity piqued. What building was worthless in Nicholas Townsend's eyes? And why did his words prickle at her sense of justice? She tried to shake off the moment, focusing on ordering her decaf cappuccino, but the laughter at her expense echoed in her head. If only he knew who she was, or who she might become. Later that same afternoon, Sophia trudged home under a broken umbrella that barely kept the drizzle at bay. Her studio apartment was situated in a worn-down building on East 12th Street. Tiny by Manhattan standards, it was still her refuge. The paint peeled in the hallway, and the elevator frequently broke, but it was hers at least until her lease ended. Inside her apartment, a single flick of a switch illuminated the cramped living space. The sofa doubled as her bed, and near the window a small desk served as her writing nook, where she scribbled half-finished short stories in the hope of publishing them someday. Stacks of library books lined the wall. One, ironically, was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a borrowed volume she'd hoped would inspire her to make better financial decisions. She had scarcely set her mug down when the phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number from California. A wave of concern washed over her. She rarely received calls from outside the city, and she had no family in California, at least none she was aware of. "Hello," Sophia answered. A calm, polite voice responded. "Am I speaking to Miss Sophia Kim? My name is Abigail Martinez, an attorney at Redwood and Bloom. I'm contacting you regarding a matter of inheritance from your late uncle, Mr. Martin Kim." Sophia's heart fluttered. Uncle Martin. She hadn't seen him since she was a teenager. He was a mysterious figure who had moved to the West Coast for reasons unknown, cutting off most contact with the family. Uncle Martin passed away. Sophia sank onto the sofa, unsettled. "I wasn't aware we'd even been in touch. Your uncle left very particular instructions," Abigail continued. "He had no children, so in his will he bequeathed his property in New York to you. Our records show it's a commercial building located in Lower Manhattan." Sophia nearly dropped her phone. A commercial building. In Lower Manhattan. She must have misheard. She thought Uncle Martin had been drifting from place to place, never settling down. "This might be a mistake," Sophia stammered. "I don't have the means to." "There's no mistake," Abigail assured her. Mr. Kim's wishes explicitly stated that the building and everything in it goes to you. I'll send the documents for your review. The property manager will reach out for further instructions. It seems your uncle trusted you to oversee it. Numb with disbelief, Sophia thanked the attorney and ended the call. Her mind whirled. She stared at her battered maternity dress, ironically, the same target of that arrogant man's mockery. She was unemployed, 7 months pregnant, and scraping by on her meager savings. Suddenly, she owned a commercial building. She couldn't sleep that night. Questions swarmed. How big was this building? Was it run down or worth anything at all? Could she possibly manage tenants? Part of her wanted to wake from what felt like a dream. Another part sensed destiny's hand at work, unraveling an entirely new path for her, one she never could have imagined a few hours ago. Morning arrived grey and overcast, reflecting the confusion clouding Sophia's mind. She received an email from Abigail Martinez containing digital copies of the will. True to her word, Uncle Martin had left Sophia all his worldly belongings, including a 4-story commercial property known as the Walton Building, located near the fringes of Lower Manhattan. A second email from the property manager, Henry Paxton, introduced him as the day-to-day contact. He requested a meeting at her convenience to hand over keys and discuss urgent matters. Sophia arranged to meet him in front of the building at noon. With a mix of fear and excitement, she donned her only decent coat, a second-hand navy trench, and took the subway downtown. The Walton Building rose before her like a relic from another era. Constructed of red brick with intricate stonework around the windows, it exuded a faint aura of old New York charm. The first floor boasted large glass windows and a sign that read, "Under renovation." On the sidewalk, a man in his late 50s, balding with a rumpled suit, waved at her. "Ms. Kim, I'm Henry. So good to finally meet you." He pressed a heavy bundle of keys into her hand. I was surprised when Ms. Martinez told me about the inheritance. Your uncle was well an interesting man. Henry paused, looking at her swollen belly. I'm sorry for your loss. Sophia offered a small smile. Thank you. I wish I'd known him better. Can we take a look inside? Henry led her through the wooden double doors. The ground floor was a vast, open space, with dust-laden floors, covered furniture, and half-demolished walls. The hum of a neglected heating system reverberated in the background. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, giving the space a faintly ominous feel. He explained that the building's upper floors were divided into office spaces. A couple of the floors were fully rented out, though some tenants had short-term leases. The renovation on the ground floor was supposed to transform it into a chic cafe or restaurant, except Uncle Martin fell ill and everything came to a standstill. Sophia's heart pounded. This building was not worthless. It might be old and in dire need of repair, but Henry assured her it carried historical significance. Investors had even approached Martin about partial ownership in the past, but he never sold. They ascended to the second floor, and Henry pointed out several offices with glass partitions. We have a few tenants here. The rest is vacant, waiting for renovations. Turning a corner, Henry pointed to a door with frosted glass and Townsend and Associates etched in gold letters. A sudden chill ran down Sophia's spine. The name Townsend jolted her memory. Nicholas Townsend, the arrogant man from the cafe. She swallowed hard as Henry continued his explanation, unaware of her reaction. You'll want to meet your tenants eventually, but Townsend and Associates is one of the main ones. They have a lease until the end of the year. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Nicholas Townsend. Henry nodded. Yes, him and his father Richard Townsend. They're a real estate investment firm. Rumor has it they were hoping to buy out this building from your uncle eventually. But Mr. Kim never budged. Images of Nicholas's smug, mocking grin filled Sophia's thoughts. She relived the sting of his ridicule over her dress. She could hardly believe it. The man who laughed at her was now her tenant. Her hand clenched around the keys, the weight of her inheritance growing heavier by the second. For the remainder of the walk-through, Sophia listened intently as Henry explained plumbing issues, electrical faults, and future renovation plans. Yet her mind kept drifting back to Nicholas Townsend. She had never wanted to see him again, but fate had other ideas. The next morning, she returned to the Walton building to drop off some documents for Henry. She tried to time her visit so she wouldn't encounter Nicholas. However, as she entered the lobby, she heard raised voices reverberating from the second floor. She can't just barge in here and change everything, a male voice thundered. Another voice tried to calm him. Mr. Townsend, please just talk to Miss Kim. Sophia, heart pounding, climbed the old creaking steps. At the top, she found Henry pinned against a wall by Nicholas Townsend's searing glare. The difference between Nicholas's pristine suit and the dusty corridor was stark. We had a deal with Martin. Kim. Nicholas hissed. Townsend and Associates was going to purchase this entire dump at a reasonable price. Now I'm hearing rumors that his heir inherited the building. Henry spotted Sophia at the landing and cleared his throat. Mr. Townsend, let me introduce Ms. Sophia Kim. She's the new owner. Nicholas turned, face twisted in irritation. Recognition ignited in his eyes. His lips parted slightly in shock. Sophia couldn't decide if it was because she was the same woman he'd insulted, or because she was pregnant, or both. You, he let out a mirthless laugh. The woman from the cafe, the one with... He gestured vaguely toward her dress, now replaced by a modest black maternity outfit. How is this even possible? Sophia stood straighter, ignoring the rapid hammer of her heart. I inherited the Walton building from my Uncle Martin Kim. I'm sorry if this complicates your business plans. Nicholas scoffed. Complicates. This building was supposed to be ours. We were in the final stages of negotiating with Martin. Did he not tell you that he was preparing to sign? She glanced at Henry, who shrugged helplessly. I have no records indicating a formal sale agreement. Only that Mr. Kim considered offers, but never signed anything. Nicholas's gaze bore into Sophia. You're out of your depth. Are you even aware of the building's extensive renovation requirements, its compliance issues? Let me save you the trouble. Sell it to me. A swirl of conflicting emotions seized Sophia. Selling might be the easiest escape. She could use the money to support her unborn child, but something about Nicholas's arrogant tone stiffened her resolve. He thought her powerless and naive, someone easily manipulated. I'm not selling, she said calmly, surprising even herself. At least not right now. I need time to understand my uncle's plans and the building's potential. Nicholas took a step forward, his voice low. The building needs more than your understanding. It needs millions in repairs. Do you have millions lying around? Sophia refused to back down. I'll figure it out. He sized her up as though assessing a formidable opponent for the first time. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Fine. You want to play landlord? Let's see how quickly you regret this. With that, Nicholas brushed past her and stormed down the staircase, leaving the air charged with tension. Sophia exhaled shakily, clutching the banister. Never had she felt so challenged, so determined. In a single day, she had transformed from an object of his ridicule to the one who now held the lease over his office. In the weeks that followed, Sophia immersed herself in the labyrinth of property management. With Henry's guidance and a stack of building inspection reports, she quickly realized the Walton building indeed needed substantial investment. The facade required restoration, the electrical wiring was decades out of date, and the plumbing threatened to fail on any given day. Between visits to her doctor for prenatal checkups, Sophia met with contractors, solicited quotes for repairs, and listened to tenants' grievances. She received a crash course in building codes, tenant rights, and real estate law. Her days were exhausting, but for the first time in months, she felt a sense of purpose. She was fighting for something bigger than herself, an inheritance that could secure her and her baby's future. Townsend and Associates, however, remained an unspoken threat. Sophia heard rumors that Nicholas was still pushing the idea of purchasing the building, even going so far as to hint that if she refused, he might rouse local inspectors to look more closely at code violations. The notion made her stomach churn. In the midst of this, she found unexpected allies among the building's tenants. A small marketing startup, Harper Innovations, run by a young entrepreneur named Melissa Harper, offered to help design promotional material for attracting new occupants if Sophia could lower their rent temporarily. A retired editor named Jonathan Brewster, who occupied a small office on the third floor, volunteered to help her review complicated legal documents. Your uncle was a kind soul, Jonathan told her one afternoon, adjusting his reading glasses. A bit reclusive, but he had a great heart. He turned down many offers to sell because he believed the building had a historical charm worth preserving. Sophia, seated across his cluttered desk, smiled faintly. I wish I'd known him better. He never stayed in touch after moving away. Why would he leave all this to me? Jonathan set aside the papers. Martin once told me he saw a similar spark in you, resilience, I think he called it. He said you understood hardship and wouldn't compromise easily. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling a soft flutter from her baby. I hope I can live up to that. Meanwhile, Nicholas was growing more impatient. Despite his father's connections, every effort to buy the building outright was met with a polite but firm refusal from Sophia. With no purchase agreement in sight, Townsend and Associates was forced to continue paying rent, albeit begrudgingly. One crisp morning, Henry summoned Sophia to the building for a pressing issue. When she arrived, she found Nicholas waiting in the lobby with a man sporting an official city inspector badge. A wave of apprehension washed over her. "Nicholas, what's going on?" she asked, trying to maintain composure. Nicholas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We have a problem. The city inspector received an anonymous tip about possible structural concerns in the building. Given that it's quite old, I can't say I'm surprised." The inspector, a no-nonsense middle-aged man, cleared his throat. "I'm here to check the building's structural integrity. If we find any major issues, we might have to issue a notice requiring immediate repairs or even evacuate certain floors." Sophia's mind raced. If the building was deemed unsafe, she could lose her tenants and her only source of income. She shot Nicholas a suspicious glance, suspecting that he was behind the complaint. "Let's show him around," she said, softly, determined to cooperate. They embarked on a thorough inspection, stopping at each floor while the inspector examined beams, walls, and load-bearing structures. Tension brewed between Sophia and Nicholas with every hallway they traversed. She noticed that whenever the inspector looked uncertain, Nicholas quietly offered extra commentary about the building's age or recent mishaps. At last, they ended up in the basement, dimly lit by a single bulb. It smelled of damp concrete and stale air. The inspector circled around large metal support pillars with a flashlight. Sophia held her breath, praying that the building's bones were stronger than they appeared. After an agonizing half-hour, the inspector emerged, clipboard in hand. "The structure is old, but it's not immediately compromised," he announced. "A few areas need reinforcing. I'll detail them in my report. You'll be given a timetable to address the repairs." Relief flooded Sophia. "Thank you. I'll make it a priority." Nicholas's expression remained unreadable, but Sophia sensed his frustration. His plan to corner her, if indeed it was his plan, had fallen short. As the inspector left, Nicholas leaned in his voice, laced with condescension. "Temporary reprieve. Sophia, don't let it go to your head." She glanced at him, heart pounding with both fear and defiance. Noted. That evening, her nerves frazzled Sophia headed back to her apartment, only to find a thick envelope slid under her door. Inside were aged photographs, letters, and a note from Abigail Martinez. "Dear Ms. Kim enclosed are personal items belonging to your Uncle Martin Kim that might shed more light on his life and relationship with you. He wished for you to have these. I believe they hold significance, not just for the building, but for you personally. Warm regards, Abigail Martinez." Sophia spread the contents on her tiny kitchen table. She discovered snapshots of Martin at different stages of his life, working odd jobs, traveling across the country. There was one photo in particular that caught her eye, a much younger Martin, standing in front of the Walton building, smiling broadly, the keys in his hand. Tucked behind the photographs was a letter, dated a year before he passed away. "My dear Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I've left this world. I know we never got to know each other well, but blood ties are not easily broken. I saw your potential the day you insisted on visiting me in that run-down motel when you were just 14. You gave me some of your hard-earned babysitting money because you believed I needed it. That memory has never left me. The Walton Building needs someone with heart. Townsend and Associates has tried time and again to convince me to sell. I refused. These men see buildings only as profit and loss. But you, Sophia, you see life differently. I believe you'll do what's right. With gratitude. Uncle Martin, tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She gently traced the handwriting, recalling that day as a teen when she snuck away to see Uncle Martin. Her parents had disapproved labeling him the family black sheep. Yet she had felt compassion for him. Now he entrusted her with the building with his legacy, an act of faith she couldn't squander. Within days, Sophia began to see progress. With the help of a small renovation loan, secured through a local credit union, sympathetic to her story, she hired a crew to fix the most pressing issues. She couldn't address everything at once, but at least she wouldn't be slapped with an eviction notice from city inspectors. Word spread of a new landlord with big dreams. A few prospective tenants showed interest in renting out the vacant spaces once repairs were complete. For Sophia, it felt like a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Then one morning, she received an unexpected visitor in the building's lobby. He was tall, silver-haired, and wore an impeccably tailored suit. He introduced himself as Richard Townsend, Nicholas's father, and the founder of Townsend and Associates. "I'd like a word with you, Miss Kim," Richard said, holding out a business card. "It seems you and my son had a tense introduction." Sophia kept her guard up, but she led him to the small makeshift office she had set up on the ground floor. Richard glanced around at the half-finished walls. He spoke with a polished courtesy that Nicholas lacked. "We were sorry to hear about Martin's passing. He was a stubborn man, but I respected him." Sophia nodded, searching his face for hidden motives. "Thank you for your condolences. My uncle didn't mention you." He offered a faint smile. "We were acquaintances in business. My firm has had its eye on this building for some time. Let me be frank. The Walton Building could become the crowning jewel in a commercial redevelopment plan. I've personally invested in the surrounding neighborhood for years." He cleared his throat. "I'd like to propose a fair deal, more than fair, actually. We'll buy the Walton Building from you, pay you above market value. You'll be set for life, Ms. Kim. No more dealing with contractors, code inspectors, or tenants. You can secure a wonderful future for your child." Sophia's heart thumped at the mention of her baby. She couldn't deny the temptation. A massive check would solve her financial worries, guaranteeing her child a comfortable upbringing. No more stress, no more struggling to patch holes in the building's roof. But Uncle Martin's letter flashed in her mind. He'd trusted her to keep the building from falling into the hands of those who only saw dollar signs. "Thank you for the generous offer, Mr. Townsend," she replied carefully. "But I'm not prepared to sell at this time." Richard leaned back, shoulders tense. "At least consider it. I can email you the details." "No pressure," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I only want to see you and your child thrive, and the building, if I'm being honest, demands resources you may not have." Sophia forced a polite smile. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm determined to see through my uncle's vision." He rose to leave, smoothing out his lapel. "Nicholas will be in touch then. If you change your mind, let us know. This offer won't last forever." As Richard Townsend exited, Sophia clasped her hands in her lap, shaky from the confrontation. She realized that the father was as formidable as the son, just more refined in his approach. The building was at the center of a high-stakes game, and she was the unlikely player standing against a powerhouse family. 2 weeks went by, and Sophia saw little of Nicholas, although she heard him occasionally barking orders to his staff from behind the frosted glass door. She focused on immediate repairs, patching up the roof, updating the fire alarm system, and ensuring the elevator met safety standards. She poured every cent of her small loan into these tasks. Yet progress was slow and costlier than expected. The baby's due date loomed closer, and exhaustion pressed down on her like a heavy weight. One afternoon, as she was reviewing contractor invoices, a gentle knock sounded at the ground floor office. She glanced up, expecting Henry or a tenant, but found Nicholas Townsend standing at the doorway, one hand in his pocket. "Busy?" he asked with an almost cordial tone. Suspicion flickered in Sophia's eyes. "Always." "What can I do for you, Mr. Townsend?" He entered, glancing around at the clutter of papers and renovation blueprints. "This is cozy," he muttered, less sarcastic than she anticipated. She set aside her work. "Spit it out, Nicholas. I'm sure you didn't come here to compliment my office decor." He chuckled wryly, shifting his weight. "You're direct. I suppose I deserve that. I wanted to discuss the building, specifically your finances. If you're strapped for cash, Townsend and Associates could hypothetically invest in the renovation." Her eyebrows shot up. This was a departure from his earlier threats and condescension. "Invest." He sighed, rolling his eyes slightly. "Look, I'm not the villain you think I am. My father wants to own this building outright, but maybe there's a middle ground. If we invest, we gain partial equity. You keep majority ownership, but have the capital to fix the place properly." Despite herself, Sophia felt a glimmer of relief. It was exactly the type of solution she needed to expedite repairs without taking on crippling debt. But she also knew that sharing ownership with Nicholas would mean giving him a foothold in decision-making. And from experience, she suspected that might lead to a hostile takeover eventually. She frowned, pushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I can't just make that call without consulting Henry and maybe an attorney. Also, what's the catch?" Nicholas's gaze flicked to her pregnant belly, then back to her eyes. No catch. Just a sound business proposition. "If you manage to turn this building around and fill up the vacant floors, you'll see a steady income flow. If not, well, you'll at least have leveraged our investment instead of sinking alone." She bit her lip, torn between practicality and pride. Before she could respond, Nicholas spoke again, quieter this time. "Believe it or not, I admire your courage. Most people in your position would have bailed by now." A swirl of emotions made her head spin. She had never expected a hint of respect from him. Confusion meshed with curiosity. Was this part of a cunning plan or a genuine moment? "I'll think about it," she managed, keeping her tone neutral. He nodded, stepping backward. "Take your time. But not too long. Construction costs aren't getting cheaper." As he left, Sophia realized her hands trembled slightly. Was an alliance with Nicholas Townsend even possible? Or was she risking everything by letting the fox guard the henhouse? In the midst of these negotiations, another curveball landed in Sophia's life. One evening, after a grueling day overseeing contractors, she returned to her apartment to find a single envelope in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a brief typed note. "Sophia, I heard you inherited a building. We need to talk. Ethan." Her breath caught in her throat. Ethan Cheng, the father of her unborn child, had left her months ago terrified by the prospect of sudden parenthood and financial instability. He'd vanished without a trace, ignoring her calls, texts, and pleas for help. And now, out of nowhere, he wanted to talk. Emotions warred within her: anger, heartbreak, curiosity. She'd come to terms with raising her baby alone, forging ahead despite the uncertain future. Did Ethan know she had come into a property and, like everyone else, suddenly see an opportunity? She wrestled with indecision. Part of her wanted to ignore him. Another part wanted answers, or at least closure. Finally, she dialed the number he had left at the bottom of the note. He answered on the first ring. "Sophia, thank God. I've been trying to reach you." She almost laughed. "Really?" "Because you did an excellent job of disappearing." He sighed. "I'm sorry. Truly. Things got complicated. My mother fell ill. I lost my job. I panicked." She rolled her eyes, not sure whether to believe him. "Now you're back." "Yes. I want to help. I heard from mutual friends that you inherited a commercial property." "That's amazing, Sophia. Think about what it means for our child. Let's meet." Her heart pounded with wary anticipation. Against her better judgment, she agreed to a short meeting at a nearby diner the following day. She spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, mind filled with swirling thoughts, the building Nicholas Townsend's investment offer, and now Ethan's sudden reappearance. It felt as though her life had collided with 1,000 diverging roads, and she was forced to choose which path to walk. The next evening, Sophia slid into a booth at Penny's Diner, an old-fashioned eatery with neon lights humming outside the window. She felt out of place among families enjoying comfort food, but she needed a neutral environment for confronting Ethan. He arrived moments later, wearing a worn coat hair slightly disheveled. He offered a small, sheepish grin. "Sophia, you look well." She gave a tight nod, arms crossed protectively over her belly. "Let's get to the point, Ethan." He lifted his hands in surrender. "Fair enough. I've been doing some thinking. Running away was wrong. I realize that now. I want to be there for our baby, especially with all these changes in your life. You've got a building. I can help manage it." A bitter laugh escaped Sophia. "Wait, you want to help manage my building? You never so much as picked up a finance book in your life. Don't you recall how you panicked over paying half our rent?" He flinched. "I'm just trying to fix things. I messed up, okay? But this is a chance for both of us to start fresh. Maybe even as a family." She studied him, searching for sincerity. She saw desperation in his eyes, an echo of the turmoil that once drove him away. If he truly wanted to be involved, was it for love or financial opportunity? Sighing, she decided to lay it out plainly. "Look, Ethan, I'm not shutting you out of our child's life if you're serious about stepping up. But my building is a different matter. It's complicated loans, renovations, and a certain real estate mogul nipping at my heels." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "A mogul? Are you in over your head? I'm good at dealing with tough guys. I can..." She held up a hand. "Stop. I don't need a knight in shining armor. I need stability. Consistency. If you want to prove yourself, start with showing up for doctor's appointments or offering emotional support. Right now, the building is my responsibility." Ethan pressed his lips together, fidgeting with a napkin. "Okay, I understand. But I just want to help." They talked for nearly an hour, hashing over old regrets and future possibilities. Sophia remained guarded. She had built an independent life since he vanished, and trusting him again wouldn't be easy. By the time they left the diner, it was clear that while Ethan wanted a second chance, Sophia wasn't sure she wanted to give it. Back at the Walton building the next day, Sophia felt the weight of her decision regarding Nicholas's investment offer. The building's repairs had already eaten up her initial loan. Future renovations would demand a larger infusion of cash, and time was running out. Several prospective tenants asked for guaranteed completion dates before signing long-term leases. Henry approached her with a stack of invoices. "We're behind schedule, Ms. Kim. If we don't pay the contractors soon, they might walk off the job." A sense of panic rose. She couldn't let the building stagnate halfway through crucial repairs. The baby was due in a couple of months, and stress threatened to overwhelm her. With her heart in her throat, she summoned Nicholas to her temporary office. He arrived promptly, wearing a charcoal suit that seemed to command the dusty space. She took a steadying breath. "I've given thought to your investment proposal. Would you mind explaining the terms in detail?" Nicholas raised an eyebrow, a slow smirk curving his lips. He pulled out a folder and laid out a plan Townsend and Associates would provide a sizable investment for the renovations in return for a 40% stake in the Walton building's future profits. Sophia would retain 60% and full managerial control, but major decisions like selling or converting the building would require mutual agreement. Her eyes scanned the documents. The terms were surprisingly straightforward, more generous than she'd expected. Then again, 40% was not a small share, and giving Townsend and Associates a foothold might open a back door for them to seize full control eventually. Nicholas leaned forward, voice calm. "If you want complete ownership, fine. Keep turning us down. But you'll never finish these renovations in time to attract high-paying tenants. By the time you do, you'll be underwater in debt. With our help, you could have the building up and running within months." Sophia sighed, the gravity of her situation pressing on her. "What if I'm still reluctant? Is there a chance you'll push me out?" He shook his head, a flicker of something regret, maybe, crossing his expression. "Listen, I was rude at the cafe. Arrogant, yes. But this is a business proposition. If you manage this well, you'll have a stable income for you and your child. We'll have a valuable property in our portfolio. No schemes this time." The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard. She studied him, remembering how he had once laughed at her. Now he was appealing to her as a partner. Her mind spun with possibilities. Was Uncle Martin's dream worth sharing with the very people he distrusted, yet faced with unpaid invoices, code enforcement deadlines, and her baby's impending birth? Sophia felt cornered. With a trembling hand, she picked up a pen. 40% is high, she murmured, but I have no better options. Nicholas offered a short nod. "Make a counter-proposal." She licked her lips quickly, scanning potential modifications. 30%. He paused, tapping a pen against the folder. 35. She narrowed her eyes, holding her ground. 32. After a tense silence, he shrugged. Deal. So they shook hands, forging an uneasy alliance. As she slid the signed documents into an envelope, Sophia couldn't help but feel like she'd made a pact with the devil, or perhaps discovered that the devil had a soul after all. The infusion of capital from Townsend and Associates worked wonders. Contractors returned, new crews were hired, and the building underwent a rapid transformation. Scaffolding enveloped the exterior windows, were replaced, and the ground floor cafe space began to take shape. A local artisanal bakery, Sweet Hearth, signed a lease for that space, excited to tap into the building's revitalized energy. Nicholas visited daily meeting with contractors or reviewing architectural plans with Sophia. They still clashed over small details, like the choice of paint color or signage style, but found a surprising rhythm in their teamwork. Melissa Harper's startup designed a bold marketing campaign, highlighting the Walton building's historic charm. Soon, the building's Instagram account drew interest from professionals seeking unique office spaces. Amid the hustle, Sophia balanced prenatal appointments and office calls. Her belly had grown rounder, making it harder to walk the building's halls all day. Sometimes Nicholas would offer an arm when the elevator was out of service, or discreetly bring her a chair during intense meetings. These small gestures caught her off guard, forging an unspoken camaraderie. Yet behind every successful milestone, a nagging worry simmered. Did Townsend and Associates plan to wrest control eventually? She kept a close eye on the finances, ensuring no unauthorized expenditures funneled money away. So far, Nicholas played fair. As renovations neared completion, the question arose. What about the second-floor offices currently occupied by Townsend and Associates? Nicholas had bigger ambitions. He wanted to expand his firm's footprint, occupying 2 floors entirely. This plan contradicted Sophia's vision of diversifying tenants. One late afternoon, they stood in front of a set of architectural sketches pinned to the wall. Nicholas pointed to the 2nd and 3rd floors. If we move Townsend and Associates into these floors, we can bring in new staff, ensuring long-term stability for the building's income. Sophia hesitated. You already have a suite? If you expand that significantly, we lose variety. Part of Uncle Martin's dream was to support small businesses. Nicholas frowned. Noble, but let's be practical. We'll pay top-dollar rent. The building's bottom line will skyrocket. Her stomach churned with indecision. And push out smaller tenants who rely on cheaper rents? He tossed the sketches onto a table. When has that ever been the responsibility of a landlord? You're in business to make money, not run a charity. Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. My uncle never saw it that way. He believed in giving back to the community. There's more to life than maximizing profit margins. Nicholas stared at her annoyance brewing. I thought we were partners. If you keep rejecting every viable option for growth, you'll bury yourself in overhead. She matched his glare. I'm not rejecting growth. I'm rejecting a monopoly that edges out the people who have helped me rebuild this place. Their heated words echoed in the near-empty corridor, tension thick as mortar dust. A thin line separated cooperation from conflict, and they were treading dangerously close to crossing it. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the Walton building turned uneasy. Contractors worked faster, finishing the new wiring and installing gleaming tiles in the refurbished lobby. Tenants moved in furniture, painting their offices in modern palettes. The building buzzed with anticipation for its grand reopening. Nicholas kept his distance, reviewing budgets and organizing Townsend and Associates' potential expansion without Sophia's input. Meanwhile, Ethan made sporadic appearances, trying to prove he was there for Sophia. She allowed him into a couple of her prenatal checkups, but wariness lingered between them. One morning, Henry rushed into Sophia's office. We have an issue. Nicholas placed an order for high-end elevator fixtures and is charging it to the building's budget without clearing it with you. Sophia felt her anger flare. She marched up to Townsend and Associates, ignoring the stares of staff as she walked into Nicholas's corner office. It was a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He stood at a sleek wooden desk phone pressed to his ear. Ending the call, he turned to face her. "Is there a reason you're bypassing me for major decisions?" she asked, voice trembling with barely contained fury. Nicholas shrugged. "We needed updated fixtures. The old ones were cheap and didn't match the new lobby design." She slammed the door behind her. "And you decided this alone. We're partners. Every major expense is supposed to be a joint decision." He set aside the phone, leaning forward on the desk. "I was under the impression we both wanted the building to have a polished upscale look. Or was that another pipe dream?" Her hands balled into fists. "Don't talk down to me. You're using your stake to force changes that primarily benefit Townsend and Associates, turning this into a high-end corporate environment, not the mixed business community Uncle Martin envisioned." Nicholas glared, color rising in his cheeks. "Your so-called community is unsustainable if the building doesn't turn a profit. Look around, Sophia. Manhattan is ruthless. If you're not making money, you're losing it." She took a shaky breath, wanting to remain calm. "I'm not opposed to improvements, but we discuss them first. From now on, you get my sign-off before any more purchases." He threw his hands in the air in exasperation. "Fine, if this is how you want it. But I'm warning you, your idealistic approach might sabotage the very thing you're trying to save." Sophia turned on her heel and marched out. Tears threatened to spill not just from anger, but from the gnawing fear that he might be right. Despite their friction, the grand reopening arrived on a crisp autumn day. A ribbon-cutting ceremony took place outside the Walton building. The fresh facade gleamed the new sign reading, "The Walton Building Established 1922, in elegant gold lettering. Sophia stood at the center of the small crowd, her maternity dress now stylish and comfortable, chosen specifically for the event. Reporters from local news outlets gathered to cover the story of a young, expectant mother inheriting and reviving an historic property. The cameras clicked as she ceremonially cut the ribbon alongside Henry, with Melissa and Jonathan standing by. Nicholas lingered on the outskirts, conversing with potential investors, while Richard Townsend was notably absent. After the ceremony, guests strolled through the newly refurbished lobby, sampling pastries from Sweet Hearth. Sophia greeted them with a polite smile, though her mind remained partially fixated on the building's future. Among the attendees was a local historian, Barbara Green, who praised the preservation of the original architectural details. "The city needs more mindful restorations like this," she told Sophia. "Martin Kim would be proud." The words moved Sophia, reinforcing her decision to honor her uncle's legacy. She might have compromised by taking Nicholas's money, but she refused to let him overshadow the building's soul. Yet no sooner had the building's doors officially reopened than trouble came knocking again. A flurry of complaints about noise parking and permit violations hit Sophia's office. Some seemed exaggerated or outright fabricated. City inspectors loomed, investigating an alleged breach of historical preservation codes. At first, Sophia assumed these were typical growing pains, but she noticed a pattern. Each complaint seemed designed to stall progress or strain her resources. Who was behind it? Late one night, she received a frantic call from Melissa Harper. "Sophia, I found something you need to see," Melissa said breathlessly. "I was searching for a marketing contact and stumbled upon an email chain on the building's shared server. It looks like someone, maybe from Townsend and Associates, has been sending anonymous tips to the city about code infractions." Sophia's blood ran cold. "Send me everything." An hour later, she skimmed through damning emails, the sender's address masked through a dummy account. The tone was unmistakably urgent, fueling complaints about minor or non-existent issues. The final line in each email read, "We urge immediate action to halt all further renovations." Rage coursed through her. Had Nicholas orchestrated this sabotage, desperate to force her hand? Or was it another player in Townsend and Associates? She recalled how from the beginning the Townsends wanted to buy the building outright, how Nicholas threatened to bury her in code violations. Now it seemed those threats were coming to life. Sophia's world was shaken when Melissa discovered anonymous emails sent from Townsend and Associates network, urging city inspectors to stall renovations. Furious, Sophia confronted Nicholas in front of his staff, slamming printed emails on his desk. He appeared genuinely shocked. "I never authorized this," he insisted. Though his denial seemed sincere, Sophia's trust was fraying. The sabotage aligned too closely with earlier threats, and while Nicholas promised to investigate, doubt lingered. Days later, amidst mounting inspections and accusations, Sophia's stress caught up with her, sending her to the hospital with false labor pains. While recovering, Nicholas visited with flowers and an apology. One of our analysts sent the complaints, he admitted. Claimed he was following orders, but I can't prove who gave them. My father denies involvement. Sophia listened skeptical, yet moved by Nicholas's concern. He insisted he had no part in sabotaging their shared investment and pledged to find the truth. The sincerity in his eyes hinted at a man torn between loyalty and principle. For the first time, Sophia sensed that Nicholas might be more than just a corporate adversary, perhaps even an unexpected ally. But one thing was clear. Someone within Townsend and Associates still saw her as an obstacle, and the fight to preserve the Walton building was far from over. As Nicholas quietly left the hospital room, Sophia stared at the ceiling, her hand resting on her belly, bracing for the next storm. At the boardroom of Townsend and Associates, Sophia faced Richard Townsend and his assembled executives. Calm but fierce, she listened as Richard proposed buying out her majority stake in the Walton building, offering a hefty payout and a promise to handle all future management. "You'll retain 10% if you like," he said, "and your hands will be free to focus on your baby." Sophia, fueled by months of sacrifice and her uncle's legacy, refused. "I won't be bullied out of what I've fought to preserve," she said firmly. The room felt tense until Nicholas unexpectedly challenged his father. "You knew about the sabotage, didn't you?" he accused. Richard's cold warning, "Be careful whose side you're on," only solidified Nicholas's stance. Back at the Walton building, Sophia confronted Nicholas. "Where do you stand?" she asked. He looked torn, but resolute. "My father crossed the line. I'm with you now." The shift in his loyalty surprised her, but it also brought a sense of vindication. In the span of one brutal meeting and one honest conversation, the battle lines were redrawn. Sophia knew that danger still loomed, but for the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. Determined to protect her legacy, Sophia contacted attorney Abigail Martinez, who swiftly filed an injunction against Townsend and Associates. At the same time, Ethan urged Sophia to share her story publicly. With help from Melissa and journalist Reena Patel, a powerful article hit the New York Times expectant mother battles corporate giant. The public rallied behind her hashtags, trended community leaders voiced support, and tenants praised her integrity. Townsend and Associates faced backlash and falling investor confidence. Richard's tactics backfired, and for the first time, Sophia felt the tide turning in her favor. Amid mounting legal battles and media pressure, Sophia went into labor late one night. Ethan rushed her to the hospital, where she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Mia Kim. Exhausted but overjoyed, Sophia held her daughter close, overwhelmed by the journey that led to this moment. Ethan stood by, visibly moved, and even Nicholas arrived later, with a quiet congratulations and a soft gift his presence, a comforting surprise. For a brief moment, all conflicts faded, replaced by the warmth of new life. Returning home with Mia, Sophia found her cramped apartment barely suitable for a newborn. While she adjusted to motherhood, Henry and Melissa managed the Walton building in her stead. Meanwhile, legal pressure mounted against Townsend and Associates. Richard's sabotage scandal exploded, leading to internal turmoil. One afternoon, Nicholas arrived at Sophia's door with startling news. Richard had stepped down as CEO under the guise of health reasons. "He's out," Nicholas said simply, then added, "And I quit too. I can't work for someone who would stoop so low." Sophia was stunned. Townsend and Associates had been Nicholas's inheritance. Yet he walked away for integrity. He promised to stay involved with the Walton building, not as a corporate figure, but as someone who truly believed in its future. Cradling Mia in her arms, Sophia realized the tides had fully turned. Against all odds, she had protected both her child and her uncle's dream. The building and everyone tied to it was on the path to something far greater. Over the following weeks, tenants thrived. The building's occupancy rate soared, and Sophia officially moved into a modest but comfortable apartment on the building's top floor, her new home and headquarters. Ethan remained in Mia's life, slowly proving himself as a caring father, though romance between him and Sophia was uncertain. Nicholas visited frequently, advising on real estate matters. Their friendship, and possibly more, began to blossom, forged in the crucible of conflict. Uncle Martin's legacy lived on the old building's hallways, echoing with renewed optimism and the laughter of newborn hope. From a battered maternity dress to becoming the unexpected landlord of an entire commercial building, Sophia Kim's journey is a testament to the surprising twists life can throw our way. She navigated sabotage, battled corporate greed, and wrestled with her own uncertainties, all while preparing to welcome her daughter into the world. In the end, the once outdated Walton building found renewed vitality, much like Sophia herself, who discovered inner strength she never knew she possessed. If her story inspired you, if it reminded you that even life's harshest storms can lead to grand, unpredictable destinies, then spread the word. Like this video, share it with friends and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of resilience, redemption, and unexpected fortune. Your support helps keep these stories alive, so let's continue celebrating the power of hope and courage, one extraordinary narrative at a time. Michelle Parker never thought her life could shatter so quickly. One day she was the glowing wife of a millionaire, admired for her poise and kindness. The next, she found herself alone, pregnant, and parked in a dimly lit supermarket lot, desperately trying to sleep behind the steering wheel of her old sedan. How did it come to this? Whispers of betrayal and the sting of infidelity pushed her out of the mansion she called home. And yet fate had only begun unveiling its secrets. A mysterious phone call and a clandestine invitation would soon change the course of Michelle's life forever. Michelle Harris grew up in the modest suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. Her upbringing was comfortable but never luxurious. Her father, Robert Harris, worked as a history teacher at a local high school, while her mother, June, managed a small daycare from their home. From a young age, Michelle learned the value of caring for others. Summers found her elbow-deep in chores at her mother's daycare, playing games with toddlers and soothing, teary-eyed babies. In a household that constantly bustled with children's laughter, she never once imagined herself living a grand, extravagant life. Yet, as Michelle finished her degree in marketing at Washington University in St. Louis, she dreamed of using her talents to climb the corporate ladder. She spent hours in the library, devouring marketing case studies and meticulously crafting plans for small local businesses in her free time. The side gigs paid little, but they earned her a reputation for creativity and diligence. It was during an off-site training session for a startup company that Michelle met Adrian Parker. Adrian, tall, charismatic, and with eyes that seemed to promise adventure, walked into the conference room and stole her breath away. He was there to speak about business, strategy, brand influence, and how to capture investors' attention. At only 34, Adrian was already a millionaire, the CEO of an investment firm called Parker Grant Holdings, known for backing innovative tech projects. Rumor had it he'd once pitched a joint venture to none other than Elon Musk, but the details were hush-hush. By the time he walked off the stage that day, Michelle couldn't get him out of her mind. Their first conversation took place by the snack table, a relatively unassuming place for a budding romance. She was fussing with the coffee machine. He was trying to decide between a chocolate-filled croissant or a plain one. They laughed at their mutual indecision, an inconsequential moment that blossomed into something extraordinary. Within minutes, Michelle felt as if she'd known him her entire life. Adrian was witty, engaging, and genuinely intrigued by her ideas. He jotted down her contact on a notepad and casually said, "I have a feeling we'll meet again," before sliding it into his suit pocket. Adrian called her 3 days later. They arranged a date at a rooftop bar in the central West End. It was there, beneath the glow of string lights and amidst soft jazz music, that Michelle discovered Adrian had an old soul. He loved big band tunes and had a penchant for surprising his companions with thoughtful gifts. That night he gave her a first-edition marketing book by David Ogilvy, a gesture that left her speechless. After hours of conversation, their connection felt palpably real, built on shared passions, insatiable curiosity, and the electricity of new love. Their relationship skyrocketed from that first date. Within 6 months, Adrian proposed on a snowy evening while they visited Chicago for a business trip. He organized a fancy dinner at the Signature Room on the 95th floor, orchestrating an entire ensemble of violinists to serenade them during dessert. The ring he offered her was modest by Millionaire standards, but precious in its simple elegance, a solitaire diamond that sparkled with promise. Michelle tearfully accepted her heart, dancing with excitement at the thought of forever. When they married, everything felt like a fairy tale. The wedding took place on the lush grounds of a vineyard near Napa Valley. Michelle wore a flowing ivory gown, while Adrian sported a crisp black tuxedo. They exchanged vows under a floral arch, with the golden California sun dipping behind them, as if nature itself blessed their union. Close friends and family clinked glasses in celebration, and the newlyweds waltzed into a future that seemed nothing short of perfect. Yet lurking beneath the veneer of wealth and romance was a truth neither suspected: money can mend many problems, but it can also create new ones. Over the next 2 years, Adrian's fortune grew exponentially. Parker Grant Holdings financed a series of lucrative ventures, placing him in the spotlight of major business publications. Their mansion in St. Louis rivaled homes in Beverly Hills, featuring a marble foyer, a crystal chandelier imported from Italy, and an expansive backyard, complete with a lagoon-style pool. Despite the glamour, Michelle remained grounded. She continued her marketing work, shifting from small gigs to philanthropic branding projects, frequently collaborating with charities like the American Cancer Society. She wanted her own achievements separate from Adrian's fortune. She believed in a partnership of equals, even if her bank account was dwarfed by his. The seeds of trouble were sown quietly. Adrian, once doting and attentive, began missing dinners and phone calls. He brushed off Michelle's concerns with hurried excuses: investors in town, urgent meeting, emergency board vote. While his business soared, his personal life with Michelle began to falter. She would wait in their expansive living room, nerves taut, phone in hand, as the clock neared midnight, just hoping for a text or call from her husband. Some nights she'd lie awake, staring at the empty space in their bed, wondering if success had turned Adrian into a man she hardly knew. Pregnancy was not part of the original plan, at least not yet. They'd discussed having children, but wanted a more stable personal routine first. Fate had a different intention. The day Michelle discovered she was pregnant, her heart fluttered between excitement and fear. She imagined telling Adrian over a romantic dinner, or maybe surprising him with a small box containing baby shoes. But that night, he came home in a foul mood, weighed down by stress and reeking of expensive whiskey. She tried to give him a back rub, sensing his tension, but he only snapped at her. "I need sleep, Michelle," he barked. "I've got a flight to New York at dawn." She swallowed her hurt and slipped into bed without telling him the news. Days passed before she finally told him. Instead of hugging her and dancing around the living room, as she hoped, he wore a conflicted expression. "Are you sure you want to keep it now?" he asked, his voice flat. Michelle felt a chill. She was stunned he'd even question it. In the weeks that followed, Adrian's schedule became more erratic. He left earlier, came home later if he came home at all. Her pregnancy cravings and morning sickness were overshadowed by an unshakable dread. She felt invisible, an afterthought in his life. Whenever she tried to address it, he offered lavish gifts, designer handbags, diamond bracelets, attempting to placate her with tokens of wealth instead of genuine attention. But Michelle wasn't a fool. She knew the signs of a relationship in peril. Whispers of a rumored affair reached her ears through the very social circles she'd once navigated with ease. Women at charity events shot her pitying glances. Men who admired her philanthropic zeal seemed hesitant to speak openly about the rumors, but the look in their eyes said enough. Something was wrong. One friend, Kelly Reyes, a public relations expert Michelle had worked with, pulled her aside after a charity gala for UNICEF. She awkwardly shifted her gaze and said, "Michelle, I hate to be the one to say it, but I've heard chatter that Adrian's been spotted in questionable circumstances. It might be wise to talk to him." Michelle's lips quivered. She thanked Kelly for her concern. Yet that night, she confronted Adrian the moment he stepped into their marble foyer, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silent house. He shook his head in denial, feigning outrage. "You actually believe gossip over your own husband?" he spat, tossing his blazer onto a couch. She tried to read his eyes to find some trace of regret or heartbreak at her accusation. Instead, she saw only anger and something else. Fear. "You're the one who hasn't been around," Michelle retorted, her voice catching. "How am I supposed to trust you when you're never here?" The fight escalated. Adrian stormed out, leaving Michelle sobbing quietly in the living room. The proof arrived in the cruelest way possible through paparazzi photos plastered on a gossip site. A tipster had snapped pictures of Adrian stepping out of a luxury hotel in New York, arm in arm, with a stunning brunette in a form-fitting black dress. The expression on his face was unmistakably affectionate, as he escorted the woman into a waiting limousine. Later, more photos emerged of them dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant, the two of them looking every bit like a glamorous power couple. Michelle discovered these pictures late at night while scrolling through her phone, half hoping to find some sign of Adrian's whereabouts. Instead, her heart shattered. The ache in her chest was almost unbearable. She stared at her reflection in the glossy marble floor of the bathroom, her hands trembling as she tried not to sink into despair. For 2 nights, she kept the revelation to herself. She felt paralyzed, her mind alternating between heartbreak and an irrational hope that this was all some misunderstanding. On the 3rd night, Adrian arrived home, smelling of bourbon and fresh cologne. Michelle confronted him, phone in hand, pictures on the screen. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Instead, he stared her down. His face twisted in annoyance. "So what if I'm seeing someone else?" he said, bitterness dripping from his voice. "You've been distant. All you do is talk about the baby." The cruelty in his words felt like a dagger to her soul. "You promised me forever," she croaked, tears welling in her eyes. She could barely stand upright as her entire body quaked. She placed a protective hand over her small baby bump. "Why would you do this now when we're starting a family?" Adrian shrugged as though bored. "I told you I'm not sure I want this child. And you were too consumed with your charity work, your marketing projects, your perfect illusions." He rubbed his temples. "I need something else." Michelle felt the last remnants of her fairy tale crumble at her feet. She had no words. The silence suffocated them both until she tore up the staircase, tears staining her cheeks, and locked herself in a guest bedroom. She packed only a small suitcase with clothes, her laptop, and essential documents. She took one last look at the mansion's corridor, the intricately carved wainscoting, the glistening chandeliers, and walked out. Outside in the driveway, she realized she had nowhere to go. Their entire life was in that home. She had few close friends in St. Louis, and her parents lived in a modest townhouse that hardly had space for another occupant, let alone a pregnant daughter. Pride also kept her from wanting to face them with such heartbreak. The only option left was her car. It was a 2012 Toyota Camry, a gift from her dad when she graduated college. Michelle sat in the driver's seat, scanning her phone contacts, searching for someone. Anyone she could call at midnight. She felt sick physically and emotionally. The baby in her womb deserved so much better than this turmoil. But she couldn't think. She turned the ignition and drove aimlessly through dark roads, tears streaming down her face. Michelle ended up parked in a quiet corner of a 24-hour supermarket lot, the fluorescence of streetlights giving the place a ghostly glow. She tilted her seat back as far as it would go, hugging a soft blanket around her shoulders. Every so often, a security guard's flashlight beam would slice through the darkness, but no one questioned her presence. The hum of cars and the shuffle of late-night shoppers became her lullaby for a night she'd never forget. Morning sickness assaulted her in the early hours. She stumbled out of the car, nausea rolling through her. She barely made it to a nearby patch of grass in time. By dawn, she was exhausted physically and spiritually. She tried calling a few acquaintances, only to reach voicemails. The clock crept toward 8 a.m., and Michelle realized she needed a plan, and fast. She thought of her friend Kelly Reyes, the PR specialist who had warned her. Taking a chance, she dialed Kelly's number. Kelly answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. But when Michelle's tear-strained words spilled out, Kelly became fully alert. "I'm on my way," she said. Within half an hour, Kelly arrived with a to-go mug of chamomile tea and a sympathetic hug. They drove to a nearby diner. Over eggs and toast, Michelle recounted the entire ordeal, Adrian's affair, his callous confession, her departure in the middle of the night, and now her uncertain future. Kelly pressed her hand gently. "Michelle, you can't live in your car. Come stay with me. My apartment isn't huge, but at least it's a safe space." Relief and gratitude flooded Michelle. She agreed. That morning, she packed what few belongings she had in her trunk and followed Kelly's sedan to a modest one-bedroom apartment near Washington Avenue. True to her word, Kelly cleared out a space in the living room, setting up a cozy air mattress and some bedding. For the next few days, Michelle attempted to compose herself. She needed to think through her next move. Should she file for divorce? Try to reconcile? Demand spousal support? The thought of confronting Adrian again made her stomach twist with both anger and a lingering sense of betrayal. Meanwhile, Kelly insisted she speak to a lawyer. "You're pregnant with his child," Kelly reminded her. "You have rights." Michelle booked a consultation with a well-known family law attorney, Lisa Green, who had handled high-profile cases involving wealthy spouses. The law firm had references from one of Michelle's philanthropic colleagues, so she felt at least somewhat secure in the attorney's expertise. Arriving at the downtown office, she was ushered into a minimalist conference room with sweeping views of the Mississippi River. Lisa was all business, her precise words delivering a brutal reality check. "Adrian has considerable assets. If he contests custody or tries to limit child support, we'll have a fight on our hands. But you have strong grounds here, given the infidelity and your unborn child." Michelle nodded, chewing her lip. Money, ironically, was the least of her worries. Her heartbreak overshadowed any financial concerns. She wanted to ensure her baby would have a stable future. Yes, but what she truly yearned for was an end to the nightmares. Each night, she dreamed of Adrian's cruel eyes of the woman in the black dress and the heartache that followed. She awoke each morning, trying to tell herself it was just a nightmare, only to recall it was all too real. After a week spent mourning her marriage, Michelle received an unexpected email. The sender's address was cryptic, email protected. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting request RE. Adrian Parker." Her pulse spiked as she clicked it open. "Dear Ms. Parker, you do not know me, but I possess crucial information about Adrian Parker that could affect your future and the future of your child. I would like to discuss this with you in person. I assure you I have nothing to gain but the truth. If you're willing, please meet me at 7 p.m. tomorrow at the Riverfront Overlook Cafe in Forest Park. A friend. Michelle's skepticism flared. This had to be a trap, or at best a ruse by some tabloid seeking a juicy story. She forwarded the email to Kelly, who shared her caution. "You can't just go alone to meet a stranger who claims to have information about Adrian," Kelly warned, brow furrowed with concern. Yet curiosity gnawed at Michelle. What could this person possibly know? Was there more to Adrian's affair, or some hidden aspect of his business dealings that explained his sudden coldness? If it led to answers or even closure, she had to pursue it. At exactly 7 p.m. the following evening, she entered the Riverfront Overlook Cafe, her stomach swirling with nerves. Kelly accompanied her, albeit seated a few tables away, trying to blend in with the evening crowd. The cafe buzzed with chatter from university students, families and couples seeking a scenic view. Michelle's breath caught each time the door opened. Finally, A man in his early 50s, wearing a tweed blazer and carrying a small leather briefcase, stepped in. He scanned the room until his gaze settled on Michelle. He approached her table, removing his hat politely. "Michelle Parker?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, swallowing hard. "My name is Charles Reynolds," he continued. I used to be an accountant for Parker Grant Holdings." Charles sat setting his briefcase on the seat next to him. With a trembling hand, he opened it and pulled out a slim folder. "I came because I discovered discrepancies in Adrian's finances," he said, voice tense. "And I believe these discrepancies are tied to his personal dealings, possibly including the affair." He sighed, steeling himself. "I know it's not my place, but what he's doing is wrong." I couldn't stay silent anymore. Michelle's heart hammered. "What exactly did you find?" Charles explained that he'd come across numerous unauthorized transfers, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars from Parker Grant Holdings accounts into a private LLC Adrian had created. Initially, Charles thought Adrian might be funneling money into a new project. But the amounts were suspicious, the timing too erratic. Then Charles discovered that some of the funds were used for extravagant personal expenses, luxury jewelry, five-star hotels, and real estate in a woman's name. The same woman Charles suspected who was pictured in those paparazzi photos. Michelle's blood ran cold. "Why are you telling me this?" Charles's expression softened. "I have a wife and kids. I know how it feels to worry about family. If Adrian is using company funds in this manner, it could lead to major legal consequences, fraud, embezzlement, who knows what else. And he's endangering everyone around him, including you and your child. Not to mention if a scandal breaks Parker Grant. Holdings could implode, leaving you and your baby unprotected." She leaned back, speechless. Adrian's betrayal now extended beyond their marital vows. He was risking everything potentially on some reckless gamble with his mistress. "Is there proof?" She managed, her voice shaky. "Plenty." Charles nodded. "I made copies before I resigned. They're in secure storage, but I can share them with you. I just want to ensure you're prepared. I emailed you because, from what I've gathered, Adrian hasn't treated you fairly. The board suspects something is amiss, but Adrian is cunning. He's managed to keep the truth buried." Michelle's mind spun. This was bigger than an affair. It was a ticking time bomb that could destroy the father of her child and everything she'd worked for. She thanked Charles for his courage. He offered her the folder. Inside were partial statements, redacted wire transfers, and the name of the LLC AP Discretionary Ventures. The word discretionary felt like a gut punch, as if everything about her life had become disposable in Adrian's eyes. Before they parted, Charles gave her a burner phone number. "If you decide to act on this, give me a call," he said. Watching him leave, Michelle felt like she'd stepped onto a precipice. She had a choice: expose Adrian's misdeeds and protect herself, or remain silent and hope the situation somehow fixed itself. She glanced at Kelly, who looked at her questioningly from across the cafe. Michelle and Kelly returned to the apartment, sprawled the documents on the dining table, and pored over them until late at night. The next morning, Michelle made an urgent appointment with Lisa Green, her attorney. Lisa's eyes widened as she skimmed the paperwork. "This changes everything," she murmured. "Adrian could face serious legal repercussions. You may have leverage to secure a fair settlement for you and your unborn child, but it also places you in a precarious position if he learns you have these documents." The question loomed: should they confront Adrian or present the information to the board of Parker Grant Holdings? Should they threaten legal action? Lisa advised caution. "We should approach this step by step." Let me discreetly speak with a colleague who handles corporate fraud. In the meantime, keep these documents hidden and stay safe. Adrian is known to have powerful allies. The storm gathered, and Michelle felt it in her bones. She reached out to Adrian's personal secretary, a polite but guarded woman named Jenna Patterson, to request a meeting. Jenna sounded surprised, but eventually fit Michelle in for a lunch the following week at a well-known steakhouse Al's on First, presumably because Adrian liked to maintain appearances in public. Perhaps he thought it was safer to meet there than behind closed doors. When Michelle arrived, her stomach churned with anxiety. Adrian sat in a private booth checking his phone. He was impeccably dressed, as always, but lines of stress etched his forehead. The moment Michelle slid into the seat opposite him, a tense hush fell over them. "Well," Adrian said, swirling a glass of water, "you wanted to meet." There was no greeting, no concern for how she was. No mention of the child she carried. Michelle inhaled deeply. "I want a divorce, Adrian." He twitched through, whether from shock or annoyance, she couldn't tell. "I should have expected this." His tone was dismissive. "Let's talk settlement. I'll give you a lump sum, you sign NDAs, and we never see each other again." She narrowed her eyes. "It's not that simple. I have proof you're misusing company funds." His face paled. He set down the glass a little too forcefully, water sloshing. "Where did you get that?" His voice was low and threatening. She held his gaze, even though her heart hammered like a drum in her chest. "I'm not going to reveal my source. But if you continue this path, it will destroy everything, including Parker Grant. If a fraud investigation is launched, you could face jail time. Do you have any idea what that would mean for our child?" Adrian's facade cracked, revealing panic. He pressed his lips together, glancing around to make sure no one overheard. "You think you can blackmail me?" he hissed. "Because that's what this is, Michelle." She shook her head. "No. I just want to ensure I'm not left picking up the pieces. I want a fair divorce settlement, child support, and an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. That's all." He leaned back, exhaling. A conflicted flicker crossed his features. "You're pregnant with my child," he said, quieter this time. For a moment he sounded almost remorseful. Then the hardness returned to his eyes. "Fine," he muttered. "Draw up your terms, give them to your lawyer, and we'll discuss. But if you so much as leak those documents, I'll make sure you regret it." Michelle refused to wilt under his threat. "Stop funneling money to that mistress. End it, Adrian, or I swear the board will know by the end of the week." He stared at her for a few seconds, a swirl of anger and dread behind his gaze. Then he rose and threw a few bills on the table for the untouched lunch. "Have a nice day," he said tersely, and walked out. As Michelle drove away, she glanced down at the seatbelt crossing her belly and whispered a silent prayer for her baby. She knew she was gambling with forces much larger than herself, but she had no choice. She had to protect her child's future. Over the next few days, Michelle felt no relief, only a building sense of danger. Adrian hadn't reached out with any official statements or settlements. She feared he might be plotting something more nefarious. Sleepless nights plagued her. Kelly kept reassuring her that Lisa Green's legal team was strong and that Charles Reynolds was still willing to testify if needed. Then a surprising message arrived in Michelle's email. Subject: another friend. Inside, she found an invitation to a second secret meeting at a private lounge in the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. The email claimed this meeting involved interested parties from Parker Grant Holdings who wanted to speak with Michelle discreetly. Her first instinct was to reject it. She'd had enough cloak and dagger encounters. But Lisa urged caution and curiosity. It could be board members who want to handle this matter internally. If they're offering a private meeting, it might lead to a swifter resolution. So a few nights later, Michelle found herself in a luxurious, dimly lit lounge. She recognized a hush-hush ambiance, plush seating, low chatter, and elegantly dressed patrons sipping top-shelf liquor. She wore a simple black dress that comfortably accommodated her small baby bump. Kelly accompanied her for moral support, waiting in the lobby. Michelle was directed to a secluded corner table by a hostess who nodded politely and said, "They're expecting you." She saw two people seated there. A man in his early 60s with sharp features and steel-gray hair, and a woman in her 40s, statuesque and dressed in a tailored navy suit. Parker, the man greeted standing to extend a handshake. "I'm James Caldwell, a senior board member at Parker Grant. This is Donna Morrison, our general counsel." Michelle felt her pulse spike. The upper echelon of Adrian's company was here face to face. Donna offered a measured smile. "Thank you for meeting us. We're aware of the situation with Adrian, at least partially. We wanted to see if we could come to an arrangement that avoids further public scandal." Michelle's throat went dry. She sipped her water, trying to maintain composure. "What do you propose?" James leaned forward, tenting his fingers. "We need to protect the company's reputation. Adrian Parker has been a strong driver of growth, but we're concerned about his recent personal conduct. The board is preparing a strategy to remove him if he doesn't comply with our demands. Demands that include ceasing any inappropriate use of company funds. We've done some digging ourselves and found enough red flags to warrant an internal audit. But we'd like your cooperation." "Cooperation?" Michelle asked, trying to mask her skepticism. Donna nodded. "We'd like you to share any documents or evidence you have. In exchange, we'll ensure you receive a fair settlement from Adrian. The board can exert pressure on him to finalize the divorce terms advantageously for you. Additionally, we can offer you financial protection, an escrow account in your name, while the dust settles." It was an unexpected lifeline, one that felt almost too good to be true. "Why are you willing to help me?" Michelle asked, voice wary. James's expression softened. "Mrs. Parker, you're carrying Adrian's child. Any scandal that drags you through the mud will reflect badly on Parker Grant. Also, believe it or not, some of us still hold on to a sense of decency. We don't want to see you destroyed by Adrian's irresponsibility." Michelle mulled it over her mind, darting between possible traps. She couldn't deny that an alliance with the board might protect her in ways she couldn't manage alone. If Parker Grant turned on Adrian, he'd lose a powerful pillar of support. "All right," she finally said. "I'm willing to cooperate. But I want to make sure I come out of this with the means to support my baby. I also want to ensure that Adrian is held accountable for his actions." Donna slid a business card across the table. "Understood. Contact me directly with the documents. We'll handle the rest. Of course, we'd appreciate your discretion." The meeting concluded with polite nods. Michelle felt a strange sense of relief, but also fear. She was stepping deeper into a corporate chess game. One wrong move, and she could lose everything. A week passed, and Michelle complied with the board's request. She forwarded sanitized versions of Charles's documentation to Donna Morrison. Parker Grant's internal audit team got to work immediately, quietly verifying the details. Charles, still in hiding, confirmed that he would speak to them if necessary, but only under legal protection. In the meantime, Adrian made one last desperate move. He showed up at Kelly's apartment unannounced. Michelle was napping when she heard frantic knocking on the door. She opened it to find her estranged husband looking disheveled and furious. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, protective instincts flaring. He barged in, ignoring her question. "So this is how it's going to be." He waved some folded papers in her face. "I got wind of your meeting with the board. You're siding with them." She stepped back, trembling but resolute. "I'm siding with what's right," she said, her voice nearly breaking. "You cheated on me, Adrian. You took money from the company. You left me pregnant with nowhere to go." He flung the papers onto the coffee table. They were copies of the internal audit's preliminary findings. "You think you're so righteous. You want to tear me down. You don't realize that if Parker Grant goes under, you'll be left with nothing. The board will wash their hands of you." Michelle's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to back down. "They've given me their word," she said, voice unsteady. "They'll protect me and my child, something you failed to do." Adrian stared at her belly bitterness, twisting his features. "You still think I'm the villain here?" he asked, hands shaking. "I wanted a different life, Michelle. But you forced me into this." A wave of anger surged in her. "Stop blaming me for your choices," she shouted. "I never forced you to have an affair. I never forced you to embezzle funds. You did that. You ruined our family." In that moment, he looked at her, with a flash of something akin to regret. But it disappeared as soon as it appeared. Without another word, he stormed out. Kelly came rushing out of her bedroom, alarmed. Michelle, trembling, sank onto the couch. "He's desperate now," she whispered. "Who knows what he'll do?" 2 days later, the board convened a secret session. They invited both Michelle and Adrian. Donna Morrison had orchestrated it carefully. It took place in a private conference suite at the Ritz-Carlton, St. Louis, a neutral, discreet location. The suite boasted soundproof walls and heavy doors that guaranteed privacy. Michelle arrived with Lisa Green, and to her surprise found the entire Parker Grant board present: James Caldwell, a few other directors, and an external forensic accountant. Adrian was already there, accompanied by a high-powered attorney, and his mistress, the same brunette from the scandalous photos, seated quietly in the back, eyes scanning the room nervously. Michelle felt a pang of envy at the woman's perfect poise, but she reminded herself this was about the baby, not jealousy. James Caldwell spoke first. "We're here to discuss serious allegations. Our audit indicates that you, Mr. Parker, misappropriated company funds for personal use. Additionally, your actions have placed the firm's stability at risk. Our investors and clients could suffer irreparable harm if this becomes public. We demand accountability." Adrian's attorney sprang to his feet, disclaimers at the ready, but Adrian waved him down. He looked exhausted, older than his 36 years. "I'll pay back what I took," he said, voice lacking conviction. "We can settle this internally. There's no need for legal charges." His eyes flickered to Michelle, a mix of anger and pleading. "Let's just handle this quietly." Donna Morrison glanced at Michelle, then said, "Before we decide on how to proceed, there's the matter of your marital dispute, Mr. Parker. Michelle has evidence of your wrongdoing. The board has reviewed it. Our recommendation is for you to finalize a divorce settlement that adequately provides for your child. Immediately." Adrian's jaw clenched. He stole another glance at his mistress, who looked distinctly uneasy. "Fine," he spat. How much Michelle bristled at his callous tone. She hadn't come here to haggle like it was a flea market. Lisa Green calmly slid a settlement proposal across the table. Adrian's attorney scanned it, eyes widening. Then Adrian snatched the document from him, quickly flipping through the pages. "This is absurd," Adrian growled. "She gets the Lake House spousal support for years. Joint custody with a guaranteed monthly stipend." Michelle steadied herself. "It's for the baby's future," she replied. "You have more than enough, Adrian. Don't pretend you can't afford it." A tense silence hung in the air. James Caldwell cleared his throat. "Mr. Parker, if you refuse, we'll proceed with legal charges. You'll likely lose everything anyway, including your ability to hold any future executive position. We can't risk the reputation of Parker Grant by allowing your misconduct to continue." Adrian glared at each board member in turn, then at Michelle. Finally, he slumped in his seat. "All right," he muttered, signing the document with a flourish of anger. "You win." A surge of relief coursed through Michelle. Yet strangely, part of her felt hollow. This was the father of her child, reduced to a cornered man forced to sign away his marriage. Could there have been a time when they might have saved their love? She pushed the thought away. That time, if it ever existed, had long passed. Adrian's attorney gathered the papers looking like a man who'd just lost a high-stakes poker game. James Caldwell nodded gravely, signifying the meeting's end. The board swiftly exited, leaving Adrian, his mistress, Michelle, and their respective attorneys. Michelle turned to leave, but Adrian unexpectedly grabbed her arm, gently this time. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, voice raw. "Just know I'm sorry." His eyes flicked to her belly, then darted away. She swallowed hard. There was nothing left to say. In the days that followed, an official announcement declared Adrian Parker would be stepping down from Parker Grant Holdings to pursue personal ventures. No public mention was made of his indiscretions, and the board quietly reassured major investors that the company remained secure. In exchange for Michelle's silence, she received a substantial settlement and sole ownership of the lake house, a peaceful retreat she'd once fallen in love with during a romantic weekend with Adrian. It felt both ironic and bittersweet to now claim it as part of her fresh start. Michelle moved into the lake house about an hour's drive from St. Louis, nestled near shimmering waters and tall pines. The moment she stepped inside, she felt a wave of memories, some happy, some tragic, wash over her. She cried, allowed herself a final grief for the marriage she had lost, and then set to work making the place her own. Kelly helped decorate the nursery, choosing pastel tones and gentle themes. Michelle enrolled in a local prenatal class, forging new friendships with expectant mothers who had no clue about her tumultuous past. She kept in touch with Charles Reynolds, who informed her that the board had offered him a quiet severance package. He was moving to Denver for a new start. "Thank you for believing me," he told Michelle in their final conversation. "I hope you find peace now." One crisp autumn afternoon, Michelle stood on the lake house's deck, wrapped in a sweater cradling her growing belly. The wind rustled the leaves, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, she noticed a figure approaching. Her heart skipped. It was Adrian. He must have followed her address from the divorce papers. She couldn't pretend she was happy to see him, but she didn't feel the same fury she once had. He stopped a few steps away, hands in his coat pockets. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied, trying to steady her nerves. He looked thinner, wearier. "I won't stay long," Adrian added. I wanted to see if you're okay." She pressed a protective hand over her belly. I'm managing." After a moment, she asked, "How's your, new life?" He shrugged, forcing a hollow laugh. "Not as glamorous as you might think. The board froze me out of everything. My relationship didn't last. Turns out she was in it for the money." Silence stretched between them. Finally, he glanced at the lake eyes, distant. "Michelle, if you ever need anything, for the baby, I'll be here." In that moment, she saw a glimmer of the old Adrian, the one she fell in love with at the snack table years ago. But the pain he'd caused her was too deep to brush aside. "Thank you," she said, mustering the barest civility. "But let's keep communication to what's necessary for our child." He nodded, understanding. "I'm sorry," he murmured again, then turned and walked away. Michelle watched him leave, tears stinging her eyes. Tears of finality, acceptance, and the faintest hope for a better future. Months later, Michelle gave birth to a baby boy, Ethan Harris Parker, in a small but welcoming local hospital. Kelly was with her in the delivery room, holding her hand as she labored. The moment Ethan let out his first wail, Michelle experienced an overwhelming flood of love she never imagined possible. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and corporate deception to arrive at this sacred moment of life. Adrian visited a week after Ethan's birth, bringing flowers and a hand-knitted baby blanket, likely from a store, but she appreciated the gesture anyway. He looked awkward, unsure how to hold the baby. Michelle guided his arms and he gently cradled Ethan, his eyes brimming with emotions he struggled to express. For a split second, Michelle saw regret flash across his features again. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan became Michelle's entire world. She established a home office, leveraging her marketing expertise to start her own consulting firm, catering to small businesses and non-profits. Word spread quickly about her integrity and passion, and soon she was taking calls from clients in Chicago, Atlanta, even overseas. She was determined to raise Ethan with a balance of financial stability and moral grounding, the very values she believed in, far from the illusions of wealth that had once ensnared her and Adrian. Adrian wrote monthly checks for child support, never missing a payment. So hot. He remained at arm's length, visiting Ethan on scheduled weekends, playing the role of a well-meaning but distant father. Michelle recognized that while Ethan deserved to know his father, she had to protect them both from the emotional volatility Adrian still harbored. Over time, Adrian's visits became more regular, and though Michelle never fully let her guard down, she appreciated that he seemed to genuinely care about their son. Ethan's first birthday arrived on a sunny spring afternoon. Michelle hosted a small gathering at the lake house, inviting friends like Kelly, a few neighbors, and some of her new mum friends from the prenatal classes. A modest balloon arch framed the porch, and a homemade cake awaited the birthday boy's messy delight. To Michelle's surprise, Adrian showed up alone, his hands filled with wrapped presents. He offered a stiff smile and a nod, staying mainly on the periphery of the festivities. When it came time for Ethan to attempt his first taste of cake, Adrian joined Michelle by their son's high chair, snapping pictures with his phone like any proud father. For a moment, the three of them formed a fragile tableau: a mother, a father, and a laughing, frosting-smeared toddler, caught in an unspoken hope that maybe, just maybe, they could navigate a future where heartbreak no longer defined them. After the guests left, and Kelly had helped clean up, Adrian lingered. He strolled out to the deck where Michelle was taking a final look at the leftover decorations. The water gleamed under the setting sun, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. "This place is beautiful," Adrian remarked, his voice subdued. "I can see why you love it here." She nodded, arms folded. "It's peaceful. Ethan can grow up away from all that chaos." He sighed. "I understand. I'm glad you're both doing well." In the silence that followed, Michelle realized she felt no anger now, just a faint ache for what could have been. Still, the decision had been made, and she had chosen her dignity and Ethan's well-being over illusions of a fairy tale marriage. "We're all trying to heal in our own ways," she said at last. Adrian gently placed a hand on her shoulder, just a momentary, tentative connection. "Thank you for letting me be a part of his life," he said, voice tight with genuine emotion. Then he left his footsteps, softly fading as he walked away. Years passed, but the lessons never faded. Michelle Parker, once known only as the wife of Adrian Parker, had redefined her identity. No longer tethered to the illusions of wealth or the trauma of betrayal, she stood as a beacon of quiet strength, a mother, a businesswoman, and a survivor of one of the most difficult periods in her life. Her consulting firm, Parker & Hart Strategies, had grown well beyond her initial expectations. She now employed a small team of passionate professionals who shared her mission to help non-profits and small businesses tell authentic stories and reach real people. Her clientele stretched across the country, and Michelle found joy not in boardrooms or gala halls, but in the everyday wins, helping a women's shelter double its donations, guiding a local cafe to build an online presence, mentoring interns who reminded her of herself a decade ago. But her greatest joy remained her son, Ethan. Ethan was now a bright, curious toddler, with Adrian's piercing eyes, but Michelle's quiet strength. He loved puzzles, adored animals, and had an odd habit of falling asleep during car rides, no matter the distance. Michelle took him everywhere from weekend markets to beachside road trips. Every time he giggled or wrapped his little arms around her neck, she felt a kind of love that eclipsed anything she'd known before. It was not rooted in promises or wealth, it was pure, unconditional. Adrian, for his part, had become a subdued figure in their lives. Their co-parenting arrangement, while not warm, was functional. He never missed a scheduled visit and kept his financial commitments without question. The scandal had forced him into exile from the business world, but Michelle suspected that deep down he understood the gravity of what he'd lost, not just a career, but the chance at a true partnership, a real family. Still, she bore him no hatred anymore. Time had dulled the blade of her wounds. What remained was a scar, a reminder, but not a prison. One afternoon, as she rocked Ethan to sleep in the nursery, they'd painted soft green. Michelle thought about how different life looked from what she once envisioned. She used to dream of limousines and gala nights, designer shoes and luxury travel. Now she craved slow mornings, the smell of pancakes on the stove, the soft sound of Ethan breathing on her shoulder. And she had built it all herself. Kelly remained her closest confidant, a sister in every way, except by blood. The two often laughed about the early days when Michelle was sleeping in her car, uncertain if she would even survive the heartbreak. Kelly had moved in with her boyfriend, now fiancé, and the two couples often met for dinners. Kelly's unwavering support had been a lifeline, and Michelle knew that she would never forget the hand that reached for her when she was at her lowest. Occasionally, Michelle would receive a letter from Charles Reynolds, now living a quiet life in Colorado. He always asked about Ethan, always signed off with encouragement and praise. "You chose integrity over convenience," he once wrote. That's rare. That's powerful. On the 3rd anniversary of Ethan's birth, Michelle stood by the lake just after sunrise. The wind kissed her face and the sun filtered through the trees, casting long golden streaks over the water. She watched Ethan play with a stick near the shore, giggling at the ducks paddling past. In that tranquil moment, she realized something simple but profound. She had made it. Not just survived, but grown, rebuilt, flourished. Her life was not defined by the man who once broke her heart, nor by the house she had fled, or the scandals that briefly gripped her world. Her life was her own now, every moment of laughter, every small victory, every lesson hard won. And more than anything, it was defined by the love between a mother and her child. Later that evening, as she tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes and whispered, "You're my favorite person." Tears welled in Michelle's eyes, and she kissed his forehead. "And you, my little one, are my entire world." She turned off the lights and stepped into the hallway, her heart full. In the silence of the house, she opened her laptop to respond to a client's email. But before she typed a single word, she looked out the window toward the lake and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning," because endings, Michelle had learned, are not final. Sometimes they are the doorway to a life more beautiful than you ever imagined. Thank you for joining me on Michelle Parker's journey from a heartbroken wife sleeping in her car to a resilient mother forging a better life for her child. Her story reminds us that no amount of wealth can replace genuine love, integrity, and inner strength. Sometimes life hands us betrayals that shatter our dreams, but as Michelle discovered, every heartbreak can open a door to a stronger, more honest future. If you found this story inspiring, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need hope in tough times. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing you these powerful real-life drama stories. Thank you for watching, and remember, when one door closes, another door opens to new possibilities. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and see you in the next video.